see a journey. A man
crossing the sands.
A knight.
A warrior. Your paths will merge.
Behold! In despair! Your new master!
Kalar raises the souls of the unspeakably evil.
You're sought to enslave all of Hyboria.
No man shall live in chains.
Come on. Run from me, and I will tear apart the monster to find you. I will follow you to hell.
Conan the Barbarian in 3D, a 2011 release. A 1 hour and 53 minute film, rated R, 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio, so you will get a really tight letterbox. English DTS Master Audio 7.1. This is currently 5.1 out of 10 on Internet Movie Database, 25% critics approval score on Rotten Tomatoes, 30% audience approval score on Rotten Tomatoes. And this is directed by Marcus Nispel. And you know I'm going to mispronounce the names, that's just what I do. Hats off to Marcus Nispel. I want to say he did a very, very good and entertaining film here of Conan, true to Robert E. Howard's novels and novelettes, whatever they are. Very, very good adaptation. We're going to talk about what the critics did with this, and we got a whole lot of stuff to talk about here. Jason Momoa as Conan. Jason Momoa does a great job here, he really does. We're going to talk about another Conan actor in a little bit, so don't worry about that. Jason Momoa does a really good portrayal here. We got Leo Howard as a young Conan. You know, in the beginning we've got where he's growing up and what happens, you know, I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but some things happen to his village and things, and as he's growing up. So the young Conan played by Leo Howard is amazing, does a great job. Stephen Lang is Kalar, again I'm going to mispronounce his name, Stephen Lang. You know, he's such a layered actor. I mean, he was I believe he was the sergeant in Avatar. He was Ike in Tombstone. You just don't know that because he's such a great actor. He really is. He does a good job here too. He really does. Rachel Nichols as Tamara, the lovely Rachel Nichols as Tamara. Absolutely beautiful in here. Absolutely gorgeous in here. Has a love scene with Conan, but again, she uses a body double. So then you got Ron Perlman as Conan. Ron Perlman, great job here as Conan's dad. Great job by Ron Perlman here. Sadly, he's mainly in the beginning of the movie. You've got Rose McGowan as Marquis. I think her name is Marquis or Marquette. Again, mispronouncing these names. I see them and then I see the spelling and I mess it up. But Rose McGowan, what a job she does here. She had several TV shows, you know, but man, I didn't really, the makeup on her was so good I didn't even recognize her at first. You know, she played in Charmed. She came in as one of those witches in Charms, and she does a great job here. Stephen O'Donnell as Lucius, Nanzo Anazi as Artis, and a whole slew of other actors here. This is filmed in Bulgaria. So what do you have here? You got an adaptation of Robert E. Howard's Conan. And to appreciate this movie, you have to know about Conan and Robert E. Howard. And Robert E. Howard wrote Conan and many other fictional stories in the 1930s. He was a pulp fiction writer for those pulp fiction magazine. They called them pulp because it was a rough paper, a pulp paper. That was the entertainment back in the 1930s. I mean, that was the YouTube. That was everything. You know, the guys sit around and open up these books. They were like magazine, you know, like comic books and stuff. But Robert E. Howard wrote this stuff in the 30s, and he's just such a great writer. I mean, when you read Conan by Robert E. Howard and all the adventures, it's like watching a movie. I mean, I fell in love with Conan in the 70s. Frank Zaretta art. Now you're going to see some of these covers. I'll put some covers up here. You're going to see some covers. I mean, a lot of the guys know Conan by the covers. And you're going to see some Frank, you know, some early Robert E. Howard covers. You're going to see some Frank, I think it's Frank Frazetta covers. Those, you know, we know those. We know Conan by those covers. And the art is just amazing in itself. But Robert E. Howard, and so he was such a prolific writer. Now I've read Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is great, and I had a hard time following Lord of the Rings, whatever. But Conan, when you're reading Conan, it's like watching a movie. So you got to know a little bit about the backstory on Conan. Robert E. Howard was like I said, a prolific writer. He was taking care of his mother. His mother got real sick. It was just him and his mom. Sadly, he committed suicide in his 30s. And that was one of the small town in Texas, I think it was, and was one of the only double funerals they ever had in that town. And he was writing this pulp fiction, wasn't making any money, very little. Little did he know that all this was going to blow up. Now later on, there's several ghostwriters that picked up the story, Conan, and wrote several other chapters and books. And but it wasn't Robert E. Howard. So what's this about? This one here is okay, so you've got, of course, you know, you go through the beginning. He starts out as a young boy. Some things happen in his village, and now he has a vendetta against Kalar or Stephen Lang. Stephen Lang's out to get this mask. He needs to put this mask together of all these people, these necromancers, so he could bring back his wife, because his wife was a witch and she supposedly was burned. And the daughter's trying to help him to get the pieces of this mask. And then they got to get this blood from a bloodline, which is Tamara. So they got to get her blood, and Conan's protecting her and moving her around. And there's a big showdown at the end. I don't really want to ruin the movie for you. It's great sword battles here and everything. And then it sets up for a couple of sequels. They were going to do two. I think they were going to do a number 2 and a 3. And it did so bad at the box office that it was canceled. Sadly, it was canceled. In the end, Conan drops off Tamara at the village, and he's getting ready. He drops Tamara at the village, and he's getting ready to take off. And it looks like we're getting all set for a sequel. There is some excellent action scenes in here, excellent battle scenes in here. There is some scenes that are framed, to me, just like the Frank Frazetta art on the covers of the Conan books. There are scenes in here that are coming right out of the book. That's why I say this is one of the best adaptations of Conan in relation to Robert E. Howard. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room before I get to the 3D. What is the elephant in the room? The elephant in the room is, and why this did so poorly at the box office, because people say there can be no other Conan but Arnold Schwarzenegger. 1982 Conan Look, I saw the 1982 Conan. Me and my buddy were so excited to go see it. I walked out of that theater fulfilled, completely satisfied. Great Conan movie for 1982. And then, of course, 1984, I think Conan the Destroyer was followed up. And we enjoyed them. We really did. And I'll agree with you. There's probably no human being on the face of the earth that has the physique of Arnold Schwarzenegger that can fulfill the role of Conan. He was the epitome of Conan at the time. But unfortunately, he didn't have the supporting cast that we have here. Didn't have the technical abilities like we have here. They stayed true to the story here. The overall, some of these reviewers says, well, they hopped around from town to town and whenever you know what's going on, go read the books. That's what happens in the novels. He hops around from town to town. Okay, that's what I mean by that. Staying true to, so look, you can't take away from, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan. But here's the deal. A lot of people didn't go see this movie because they're like, oh, there could never be another Conan. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan, there'll never be another Conan. I'm not going to go see the movie. Well, you cheated yourself. You really did. You cheated yourself. That's like saying there can only be one Batman. There could never be another Batman. A lot of people played Batman. And they did a great job. I was thoroughly entertained in this movie. Thoroughly entertained. Loved every minute of it. I'm going to watch it again. I thought it was great. I really did. Let's talk about the 3D now. I tell you what, the 3D starts off with the titles. In fact, this was going to be called Conan. Then it was going to be called Conan 3D. And then they finally settled on the third title. But Conan the Barbarian. The titles are great. They come way out. You got sparks in the room and everything. And then it settles into an into the window 3D. It settles into that. And a very shallow into the window 3D at that in most parts. And I found myself a couple of times checking my glasses, is it on, is it off? But every time I would turn it off, and then when I would turn it back on, I could see that depth going into the window, and I go, yeah, I guess I'm getting used to 3D. But yes, it's there, and it's beautiful. And here's another thing, the color palette is kind of muted. It's a gritty, grimy, bluey green color palette, for this era. A lot of gore, a lot of blood. It's rated R. There's some nudity, little quick sex scene there, but nothing over the top. So that depth in that 3D in the forest, and mainly in the interior shots, I find on the shallower 3D in the window depths, the interior shots look the best. But there are some spots looking down and looking across and things like that. You're going to get some stick-outs. You're going to get some fly-outs. You're going to get some fly-outs of some rocks, some cart, wheels and stuff. You're going to get some things flying out the screen. You're not going to do a whole lot of this, but there will be some pop-outs. But I would have, they played it mildly. This is 2011. They didn't push it too far. But to me, it is much better in 3D than to not be in 3D. I'd much rather watch this in 3D than not in 3D. So what I'm going to do with this? Conan the Barbarian in 3D. For the movie itself, I'm going to give it 3.75 out of 5 stars. And for the 3D, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5 for the 3D. I would have liked to see a little more pop out, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I recommend, look, like I say, you got to be a Conan fan. I recommend you pick it up. There's a lot of blood, a lot of gore, a lot of sword play and everything. You got to be a Conan fan or you're not going to watch this. I know it, because that's what happened with the ticket sales. That's why this flopped. All right, so what'd you think? Did you see it? Did you see it in 3D? In 2011, the theaters? So leave some comments below. Did you see it in 2D in 2011 in the theaters? I know what you're going to say. Leave the comments below. Rate this however you want. I don't care. I understand. Arnold Schwarzenegger 1982 Conan. I get it all. Leave the comments below. That's great. That's what we want to hear. I want you to stay tuned. I want you to stay safe. Hope you had a great Easter. Have a good night. As always, God bless.